Hello and welcome to the RA Group Daily Webcast. Today we have a Glyndebourne Special edition as part of their open house series. Glyndebourne's response to COVID-19 with free opera everywhere to everyone. Today, the first one will start tomorrow at 5 o'clock, starting with the Marriage of Figaro. As catering partners to Glyndebourne today, our culinary director, David Sims, will be demonstrating how to make the Galvin brothers' special Tarte Tatin recipe from the new Middle and Over restaurant. If you have any questions throughout the demonstration, please message us throughout the broadcast. Now over to David.
Good morning everyone, hope you're well and thank you for joining us this morning. So as Gavin said, I'm going to be making a tart tatin today, a classic apple dessert. It's actually one of my favourite desserts to eat. So I'm just going to walk you through what we need before I start. So very importantly, we need a straight-sided pan. It's very important, as you see when I go through the process, why the straight side is there. Then we've got some Braeburn apples. The recipe on there is for 4 people, so there's 7 Braeburn apples, salted butter, caster sugar, and puff pastry. Then to go with that, we're going to make a caramel sauce, and the recipe says crème fraîche with normally crème fraîche, which is Calvados. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any crème fraîche through any shops I went to, so I'm just going to do some whipped double cream, so creme chantilly. So I'm going to start going through the process. We're going to start with weighing out the butter and sugar. So this is, again, you put your scales on top of the pan. Sorry, pan on top of the scales even, get it the right way around. You just want to weigh your butter into the dish, so you get a nice accurate weight, and it's just easier, as you'll see. So I'm just going to, the recipe is 110 grams of butter, so I'm just going to slice thin layers and just place it into the pan, evenly around, till I get to 110 grams. It's really important that you get an even layer along the bottom of the pan, so as it melts and starts to caramelise, you get an even caramel. If it was not even, your caramel would cook unevenly, and then you've got the risk of it burning before it's evenly coloured. Okay, so we go 110 grams of butter, and on top of that I weigh 130 grams of caster sugar. So zeroed out the scales again. I'm just going to pour that on the top. Move the scales. And at this point, you just want to push it down so it's even. Again, as I said earlier, you want a nice even layer. You could do the butter first. I find if you put the sugar on top, just saves you getting really dirty fingers, because the sugar kind of acts as a little barrier. So again, as I said, really important you get a nice even layer all the way across the bottom of the pan. So this is a 24 centimetre diameter pan. As I say, the recipe is designed for 4. Okay, so as you can see there, got a nice even layer across the base of the pan. Level that off. Then comes to the apples. So just put that on the stove. Just wash my hands. So as I said, the recipe is Braeburn apples. You need a firm apple which has got a good texture. You can't really use a floury apple because it will cook too easy and it will break down and not give you the structure you're looking for. So you could substitute it for a Cox apple, would work equally as well. But other apples don't tend to have the same sort of structure. Raw Garlic maybe, but Braeburn is the best by far. So I'm just going to show you how to prep the apples. Very, very simply, really easy way of peeling an apple is whizzing your speed peeler around the bottom. So you peel it there. Same around the top. So you peel the top and the bottom. and just do simple strips all the way down. It's just a lot quicker and easier. Peel. Again, top and bottom.
David, is there any other kinds of fruits you could use in a tarte tatin?
Yeah, you can literally use any fruit at all. All I suggest is, if it's a softer fruit, I'd change the method of doing it. So I'd maybe make the caramel first, let it set in the pan, and then put the fruit on top. So obviously a softer fruit's going to cook a lot quicker. So the apple, I've just cut it in half from the stalk going straight through down to the bottom. And then a great way I find of preparing them is get a preheated scoop, a little baller, and then you take out the core of that, and then with it you just go to the top and then the bottom, and you prep the apple. Quite simple, nice and clean, a really simple way of doing it. So again, preheated scoop in the middle, little spin, removes the core, top and tail it.
And it obviously makes them look a bit more attractive when you put the tart out later on. Yeah,
it's all about the shape. But again, it's just, if you core the apple, you know, with a traditional core going through the top, I find you don't get all the core out. Also, you get a kind of much bigger hole at the top there, which will, you know, obviously impacts the visuals at the end. Okay, so that's my apples prepped. Okay, now it comes to arranging the apples. Now what you want to do is the stalk end, where the stalk will grow, goes to the outside side of the pan. So you just push up towards the end, outside the rim of the pan, again stalk side, and then you just overlap the apples going around the outside of the pan. Again, making sure that the stalk side goes out. Now I prepped these apples literally just before we went live, so they're slightly discoloured, but it doesn't matter because obviously it's going to be cooked in caramel. So the apples will absorb all that caramel, so it doesn't really matter. So again, you've got a lovely ring all the way around the outside, slightly overlapped. You want to overlap them because as they cook, they're going to shrink, but you want them to keep their shape. You don't want to have gaps when you finish them. The last two halves, you just stick in the middle.
David, we've just got another question here. Could you use Bramley apples?
You could technically, but the flavour is going to be too tart. Plus, they're quite large. You want quite a, as I say, a full flavoured fruity apple with a dry texture, so it cooks a lot easier. You know, but you technically could use, it would work with the Brandy, but flavour-wise, it's not going to work great. Okay, so the next stage is getting the puff pastry. Now again, I've pre-rolled this purely because it needs to rest in the fridge. It's like any pastry you roll, it needs to rest so it retracts and it keeps its shape. So literally this was a block of pastry rolled out nice and evenly. It's kind of like 3 to 4 mils thick. Nice and rolled out, just let it rest in the fridge so basically retracts. So I'm just going to pull that off the tray, it's been sitting in the fridge on. Now what I want to do is cut a disc of pastry which is wider than the pan and also has got the depth, the same depth in the pan. So if I was to stick my pan over there, and I'd roughly get it. So the easy way of doing it is just getting a plate, which again, if you look from above, it's got a kind of like an inch extra diameter than the pan. Each side, it's got enough pastry to tuck down the sides. So I'm just going to flip that over the top of my puff pastry. Cut that down. And then, really important part is you dock the pastry. So docking the pastry just pierces all the layers. So puff pastry is built up of multiple layers of fat trap between the dough. So this stops the puff pastry puffing up too much, but also helps you get a really crispy crust. So I'm just going to dot that all the way through. Then I'm just going to pick up pastry. And this is the really important part. Okay, so you lay the pastry over the top of your pan. Then what you're going to do is you get the apple, open it out, and tuck the dough down the side of the pan. Get the apple, move it away from the side, tuck the pastry down. Do that all the way around the pan. This is basically making a lip. So this is why I said earlier you need a straight-sided pan to hold the pastry in place. Gives you a really nice crust as it cooks through, because as it's cooking, the butter and the caramel come up the side of the pan to make the pastry all really crispy and caramelised, which is one of the best parts of the tatin in my world. So again, pull the apple forward, tuck the pastry down. So you almost want to get the pastry tucked underneath the apple if you can, so it's creating a nice trapped edge. And if you just get your back of your fork and any pieces that just push down. Okay, as you can see, there you go, you've got a nice even ring of pastry tucked down the side of the pan, ready to go. So now, a little trick, it saves you making, or saves you cleaning down a lot afterwards. I've got an induction stove, so what I'm going to do is just place some silicone paper on the top of the stove. Okay, you'll see why in a minute. If you had a gas stove, you can use foil. Just where your burner is, cut a little hole where the burner is, put the foil over the top, put your burner back on, and then again it's going to catch, basically it's going to be caramel coming down the sides of the pan in a minute. So it's going to sit on top. Now I'm going to put this on a reasonably high heat, so 9 to maximum, so I'm going to put it on 8 to start cooking through. Now what we're going to do here is the butter's going to melt, and the caramel's going to, the sugar's going to melt, it's going to turn into caramel. So what I want to do is cook this on the stove until it's kind of like a light amber colour. So it's going to take about 10-15 minutes, but it's the most important part of the tatin. So making sure you get the right colour is essential to the overall finishing product of your tart tatin. Now if you go too light in colour, it's going to be a very pale coloured tart tatin, not very crunchy. And obviously if you go too dark, it's going to become very bitter and not taste very nice at all. So it's quite an important part, and as you see going through the process, you'll see the apple juice start to come out and make a nice sweet caramel. So you'll see that process as I go through. So as that's coming up, I'm just going to have a little wipe down.
David, I've got some questions for you, if that's okay.
Yeah.
First of all, would you rather make your own puff pastry or buy it?
That's a good question. The puff pastry is a very labour-intensive process. Not many people, big hotels make it. If you've got a dough break, which is a big machine that rolls out and layers it, it's kind of good. Make it by hand, it's just not worth the effort, really. So you can get good puff pastry from shops and suppliers. I would definitely buy an all butter puff pastry rather than a vegetable fat pastry. Obviously, flavour is much better with all butter. So yeah, buying it, in answer to your question, buying it, I would suggest.
David, would you substitute the puff pastry for any other type of pastry for this recipe?
Not for this recipe. Again, you just don't get the lightness and the crunch, and also because puff pastry is made with a dough, it's got more elasticity. If you make a short crust pastry, it's basically like a shortbread, so it would actually crumble as you put it on top. You can sit on top, it would crumble and fall apart. Okay, so don't know how well you can see that. It's starting to boil around the outside, so I'm just going to lift it up to the camera. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah, we can see that. Looks beautiful. We see it bubbling around the sides.
It's starting to emulsify as everything melts, and then obviously the juice is going to come out of the apples, dilute that, and it's going to re-emulsify. So you can see a lovely colour profile coming in. So I'm just going to keep an eye on that. Whilst that's happening, I'm just going to go on and make the caramel for the caramel sauce, which is obviously dressing the plate. Because there's actually not much caramel left in this when it cooks, because as it cooks, the apples basically suck up all the caramel and give you that great flavour profile. So this is why you see now where the greaseproof paper comes into play, which is bubbling right up along the sides. And what you need to do is just every so often just move your pan, slightly moving it around so you get an even cook. On an induction pan, on a solid top stove, or even a gas stove, you just want to move it around so you're making sure you get an even colour.
David, we've got some more questions. Will gluten-free puff be okay?
Yes, it will. Yeah. Again, the important thing with puff, it's made with a dough, so it's a dough then layered with butter. So yes, you know, it will give you the strength and structure you need. Okay, so at the back we're going to make a direct caramel. So that's a pan where we just need it to go hot, and we put some sugar in. So I don't know, again, I'm just lifting it up, it's starting to come around nicely. So just moving that around again. So I've just turned the heat down slightly because it's boiling quite rapidly. So at the back there I've got a pan just warming up nicely. That's on full heat. So I've just got some caster sugar. Just going to sprinkle enough caster sugar at the bottom of the pan, just so it's an even layer, and then watch that melt slowly.
David, obviously we can't get all the ingredients that we'd like all the time. Do you have any top tips for substitutes for various ingredients in this recipe?
Yeah, so again, the recipe states using crème fraîche for the cream, crème Normande, which is crème fraîche with Calvados. So I couldn't get crème fraîche, I'm just going to do crème Chantilly, which is whipped double cream. Likewise, you can do whipped mascarpone. If you didn't have Calvados, you can have Brandy. So yeah, absolutely. Again, with the fruit, any fruit. I mean, I've done tart tatins with strawberries, banana, pineapple, mango, pears. You know, you can do multiple different fruits. Again, just you change the technique. You make your caramel first, let it set, put your fruits on top, tuck it down. Sometimes it's going to cook a lot quicker with soft fruits. So,
David, sorry, would you say that this dessert? Sorry, David, we just had another question through. Would you say that this dessert is better eaten hot or cold? Oh,
that's a great question.
Tough one, isn't it?
You know what? Controversially, I think I prefer it cold. It's excellent both ways. You know, when it comes out of the pan, you let it rest. You can cut it. You know, you can have it cold and then cut it again and put it in the oven as a slice to reheat. But for me, I really like the cold because the pastry is really crunchy and chewy still. The apple's moist. You know, I like both. So again, guys, I don't know if you see the sugar's just started to melt. Now with direct caramel, we just want to keep adding a little bit of sugar on top at a time and keep melting. Okay, so also we're getting to a good place now. Don't know if you can see the colour on that side is different to this side. It's kind of like starting to go amber here, it's still quite clear there. So again, that shows I'm just going to move my pan round so I can get the even colours. And I've got the caramel. Obviously, you guys don't need to multitask as well as this. You can make the caramel sauce whilst it's in the oven. I'm just doing this for speed and showing you. So again, it's melted, a little bit more sugar on top.
We've had a question from Judith again. She says, I have a tart tatin dish, but I can't use it on my induction hob. Can you put this straight into the oven, maybe without the pastry to start? So
again, so if your pan doesn't go on the stove, what you could do is make a caramel like I'm doing here. When it gets to this stage, you'd add your butter, pour it into your tart tatin dish, let it set, put your apples on top, your puff pastry, then cook it in the oven. And it'd work that way. So you could do, you know, the same way. As long as you've got a pan that does work to make the caramel, you could do the same thing. It's a little bit more sugar. Things are getting really close here, so I'm just going to keep an eye on my tarts because the caramel's looking beautiful on this side. It's still a little bit pale on that side. So as I said, just moved it around so I've clearly got a hot spot in my pan. And also, as you can see, the puff pastry is starting to dome. This is the great sign of this. That means the apples are starting to cook. And the steam's pushing the dough off the apples, so you get a lovely dome, and then that's going to keep the pastry away and keep it crispy. Okay, so I've got my sugar. That's nice and amber. What I'm going to do is add about 50 ml of water. Bring that back to the boil, and that's going to be my caramel sauce. So it's literally half the amount of water to sugar for caramel sauce, and you get a nice syrup.
It's getting quite steamy over there.
As soon as it comes up to the back up to the boil, obviously as soon as you add water, it stops the caramelization process. It obviously then solidifies the caramel. So just bring it back up to the boil, will melt anything that's solidified, and you get a nice syrup. Okay, so that's coming up nicely, and as you can see, the tart is really coming together quite nicely now. Again, it's beautifully emulsified. The butter and the sugar, the apple juice has started, so it's a really buttery looking caramel. Still slightly darker on my side, closer to me than the far side. So I'm just going to keep moving that around.
David, perhaps you could explain why we're doing one of the Galvins recipes.
Yeah, so the Galvins, Chris and Jeff, good friends of mine, we're bringing them into the Middle and Over restaurant. So they're going to do writing and consulting menus for the Middle and Over. So working alongside with the team on site to write the whole of the menus and tastings, and obviously be there for the opening nights of every session. As you can see there, so it's re-boiled, it's a beautiful syrup. And I'm just let it cool slightly before I put it into a squirty bottle. So great, as you can see there, beautiful caramel colour, nice and sticky, but the water's let it down slightly. Okay, coming back to the tarts. Again, pick up, we've got a beautiful dome top, steams coming out. So on one side, say you can see the caramel coming through, or just the amber colour. So this side here, the pastry's risen up slightly. So all I'm going to do is get the back end of a fork and just tease it away from the side and let the caramel come up the side. Tease it away. I'm not sure if you can see that coming up, but it just comes up nicely, just to get the caramel up. So what we're going to do, as I said, you want that caramel to come up the sides and really make the pastry crispy.
Looks incredible, David. We've got loads and loads of questions coming through. So just one here, a question around the apples and the shape that you've cut them. Could they be sliced more thinly?
Not really, because they'll cook to a pulp. So you need them to keep the structure. So that means you need to be quite chunky. If it's a really large apple, you could cut it into quarters, but you want this shape and to maintain the shape during the cooking process, because it's in the oven for an hour and a half. 15 minutes caramelisation on the stove, and then an hour and a half in the oven. So it's about, you know, really keeping the shape and the structure, and so you get really buttery texture of the apple because it sucks up all that caramel. Okay, so we're almost here on the stove. It's really nearly there. So it's quite an important stage this, you get the colours right. So again, picking up, see how it's kind of amber colour on that side, almost there on this side, so we'll give it another minute, and then I'll be happy with that. As I'm just moving it around, as you can see, putting the greaseproof paper on top just stops messing with your stove, because caramel sitting on the glass just is an absolute bugger to clean. And likewise, if you've got a gas stove, it's even harder. So a really good tip there if you need to save your stove. The last thing we're going to do, whilst I'm finishing off that, is just going to make some creme chantilly. So as I said, the recipe is creme Normande, which is creme fraiche, and a little bit of rice sugar and some Calvados. I'm just going to do some chantilly, which is whipped cream with some vanilla. I'm not going to add any sugar to it because there's quite a lot of sweetness going on here. But that's that. I'm almost doing that. Okay, just keeping an eye on my pan, that's almost there. So literally, I've got 200 ml of cream there.
David, we had a funny question here. It says, what's the best ratio of brandy in the tart versus brandy in the chef?
Well, if you put some in the cream, you've got to put some in yourself, right? So
well, obviously.
The right flavour and the right volume. So I've just got some vanilla extract here, which I have at home. It just lasts quite well. It's not essence, it's extract, so it's literally the seeds from the vanilla. You know, obviously essence is synthetic. You can use essence if you wanted to. I've just got the extract there. Okay, so we're there on the tart, almost. I'll give another minute. So what I'm going to do is going to whisk the cream, obviously keeping an eye on my tatin as I do so. Now, the thing with cream, if you're whipping cream, it's important not to over whip the cream, okay? Because once it's over whipped, you can't bring it back. It goes grainy. But also, as it sits in the fridge, it does firm up. So keep an eye on that. Sorry guys, I'm just keeping an eye on the tart whilst I do this. So really nearly there.
Wow, that's really bubbling away now, isn't it?
To be stating the obvious, that caramel is, you know, 160 degrees. It's going to hurt if you get it on your hand. And before anyone asks, yes, I have burnt myself really badly on making Tart Tatin before. I've got the scars to prove it. So please be careful. Okay, so I'm nearly there. Keep whisking the cream, keeping an eye on that. Let's say, yeah, so I mean, your cream, the caramel sauce can be done the day before if you want. There's no pressure at all. And even the Tart Tatin, if you want to do for a dinner party, you can make it in the morning. And then, as you see, it will sit when I pull it out of the oven, how well it holds itself.
David, I'm not sure you can hear us, but can you use brown sugar for the caramel?
Again, you could do. It's a very different flavour. Brown sugar is a very molassesy flavour, and it would make it quite a rich, even richer dessert. So technically, yes, you could, but I wouldn't, purely for that reason.
Fantastic.
Okay, this is again why you see the benefit of the greaseproof paper now, because it's really bubbling up.
And then a few people have just asked, can you sort of recap some of the steps and how much sugar you've used in the recipe? Yep,
so it's 130 grams of caster sugar and 110 grams of butter. And then 7 Braeburn apples and some Puff Pastry. So that's really nearly there. I'm just going to keep an eye on it whilst I'm whipping this cream.
It's probably worth noting that the recipe and the ingredients will all be listed on the Glyndebourne website as well as the RA Group website, which you can go to straight after this for more details.
So the oven's been preheating at 160 degrees, that's fan oven, 160 degrees, and I've got a shelf placed in the middle of the oven. I've also got on the shelf below it, I've got a tray lined with foil, because obviously any caramel that drips out of the pan during the cooking process, you just want to catch it on a tray with foil, so again it just makes cleaning down afterwards a lot easier. Okay, so I'm happy there with that colour, so I'm going to just pick it up, show you I've got the colour on the sides. It's like an amber colour, really happy. The puff pastry is nice and puffed, so I'm just going to throw that into the oven now. Let's say preheated, 160 degrees. And again, you see there, that would have been on the stove, so very simple. I'm just going to fold it up, throw it in the bin, and then easier clean down process. So just going to finish off the cream. Now, so that the Tart Tatin wants to be in the oven for an hour and a half. It sounds like a long time, I know, but you're cooking at quite low temperature. So it's 160 degrees in the fan. So again, you want the apples to soak up all that lovely buttery caramel that's in there. But also, the main thing is you want the puff pastry to be really cooked through, all the moisture be removed, and really crispy. Again, as you saw on the stove, the puff pastry, the steam made the dough lift up away from the apples. So again, it just enables that to float almost based on the steam, and that helps it get really, really crispy. Any other questions, Gavin, whilst I'm just whipping this?
Oh gosh, we've got lots of questions.
Loads.
Why don't you start first, Sonia?
You mentioned earlier about using different fruits. If you were to use pear, David, what type of pear would you recommend?
I would use a conference pear or a Williams. Again, it's a nice firm pear, good shape. But you technically could use any pear, but conference or commis are the two I would use. Also Williams aren't very easy to get in supermarkets. Williams are a beautiful pear.
I've got a really good question about what do you serve with this? Is it best cold or hot? And what other items can you add to this?
Sorry, Gavin, can you repeat that question?
Yeah, how would you serve this as a dessert? Is it best cold or hot? And what else can you add to it?
Again, you can serve it either way. Traditionally, it's served hot. And again, it's normally served with a cream of some description. Let's say we're doing Chantilly here. The Galvins recipe use creme fraiche and Calvados. Also, you could do clotted cream ice cream. You just need something creamy to cut through the richness of it. Yeah, so anything creamy would work. Ice cream, vanilla ice cream, clotted cream ice cream, Chantilly, creme fraiche, mascarpone. It just really helps cut through the richness. Okay, so the cream's almost there.
And can you freeze this afterwards?
Tartan?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no reason why you couldn't, but you're not going to get the same beautiful texture. I guess you could put it in an airtight container and freeze it if you wanted to, but I would recommend kind of eating it the same day you make it.
And David, could you also just go over the caramel recipe again? A few people have messaged in asking for more details about how much sugar you put into the first pan.
130 grams of caster sugar and 110 grams of butter.
Perfect.
Okay, so the cream is just coming together nicely. My exercise for the day. Going to the gym.
David, sorry, we've just had a question from Sean F really quickly around the Calvados. He said, can you add it to the apples?
In the pan?
Yeah.
You could do, but it's going to cook out completely and it's going to change the recipe somewhat. If you add it to the cream, you're going to get the freshness of the cream and the pure nature of the Calvados in. Okay, so as you can see, the cream is nice and hot there. So I'm going to just grab a grease or spatula and just scrape down the sides. I'm just going to place that in the fridge to firm up.
That is a lot of workout for a Saturday morning.
Yeah, it is. Okay. So, let's put down the stove quickly. So, I put a tartan in, obviously, an hour before we went live. So that's just going to be coming out any second. Just have a look at it.
David, we've had a question. Would you have to whip the creme fraiche if you're not using double cream?
That's a very good question, actually. You get different types of creme fraiche. Obviously, the French Normandy style is thicker, naturally thicker. I would avoid buying ones which have got emulsification element, emulsifiers in, which you can see by reading the label. But just a French natural creme fraiche is good. If you get a creme fraiche and you open the lid and it looks quite loose, the best thing to do is just place it in a sieve with a J cloth, obviously a brand new J cloth or a tea towel. Leave it in the fridge overnight, and any excess water will come out of the creme fraiche. So it's something like a soft butter texture, and it's a perfect texture for spooning onto your dessert. Really, really good texture. So the tart's just about to come out of the oven. So this is the fun part, and obviously quite the dangerous piece. So you need to be very, very careful. Obviously your pan's been in there for a long time. It's going to come out very, very hot.
Is this the moment of truth?
Hopefully, yes. So there we go, Tarte Tatin. Now I didn't have two straight-sided pans, so I made it in the difficult pan. This has got a it's a frying pan, but so it's got angled sides, so it's harder to keep the pastry nice and tight. So I used that this morning, so it'd be easier. Okay, so then what we're going to do is this can rest like this, and you can leave it in your pan. If you made it tonight, I want it for dinner tonight, I could leave it in my pan, and then later on tonight I could just warm it back up through in the pan and do the same process, tipping it out. So what I want to do to cut it, I need to slide onto the board. So this is obviously the important part. So I'm just going to put a piece of greaseproof paper on the top, fold the pan, and we'll get the flat side of the tray, not the lip side, the flat side up. Just going to sit that on the top. And this is the bit you need to be careful, because when you turn it over, you don't want to pour caramel over your wrists. So just going to pick it up and quickly flip it over. And then voila.
Oh, beautiful. Wow.
So, and then the reason I did it on the flat side up, so I just easily get it onto your board, slide it onto your board. So again, you've got beautiful caramelisation around the outside. I think it looks quite dark, but you know, it's crusty, really, really nice and crusty. I'm just going to get a knife, very simply, on the pastry. Being careful, obviously, it's very hot.
Judith has wrote in, she says, wow.
Who's that?
Judith, that looks delicious. Oh, yes.
Very, I don't know if you heard that crunch there. Okay, so I've got a nice slice. Let's move that over here. Bring my plate over. So I've got my caramel sauce, which I put into a bottle. Just a zigzag of that. Grab a fish slice. Obviously still being careful, it's very, very hot. Picking it up, placing it on your plate. I've got a little bit of hot water and a spoon. Just going to grab the cream from the fridge.
You heated the spoon so that it would make a nice.
That's called a rocher.
Okay.
Just it's a fancy way we do it in the restaurants.
Is that why we've gone wrong all these years?
It's Tarte Tatin, caramel sauce.
Wow.
Chantilly cream.
That looks incredible.
Really,
So good.
really crunchy pastry there. Just going to turn the light down bright. You can see that. I'm turning the lights on so it's a bit better.
Voila.
Yeah, Tarte Tatin, Chantilly, caramel sauce.
That's incredible.
Guys,
we do have lots of questions, but we've not much time, so we'll quickly go through if that's okay. Can you use buttermilk margarine, or does it have to be a butter? And is there a vegan alternative?
Good question. The margarine, no, it would split. I would, I'd just remove the butter element from it and then use a vegetarian, like a vegetable fat-based puff pastry. It's just going to lighten up. It's not going to be as rich as it would be with the butter in the tatin, and then obviously just omit the chantilly, and maybe just do some raspberries or something with it to help go with it. But yeah, you could.
Thanks, David. We have another question here from Judith. Do you have to worry about the caramel sauce setting, or will it stay like that for piping?
If you do the ratio I said, so half the volume of water to sugar. So if you did 100 grams of sugar, did 50 mils of water, that's the texture you'll get at room temperature. If you put it in the fridge, it's going to go stiff and you'll never get it out of the bottle. So once you make the caramel sauce, leave it at room temperature and you get a beautiful consistency.
Fantastic. Angus says it's great to see a chef who cleans along the way. You do have one of the cleanest kitchens I've ever seen, David.
Yeah, I'm slightly fussy on that sort of thing, aren't I? And likewise, tart like this, I'm just going to transfer it onto a plate and leave it, so you can put it in the fridge. I wouldn't cling film it until it's cold, and certainly don't put it in the fridge until it's cold. But it's you can, then you'll set this pastry really crunchy, and the pastry is nice and firm. As you can see, there's not a lot of juice coming out of that at all. So it stays nice and firm, and it's a lot easier to cut when it's cold. And if you want to then put it hot, just put it on a greaseproof paper, back into the oven about 160, about 8 to 10 minutes, and you get a beautiful slice of tart tatin like that. And it's nice and clean and really easy to do.
Well, thank you, David. I think that's all we have time for today. I think that was a fantastic demonstration. And how do I order one to my house?
Via text, and I'll send it in the kitchen post.
Oh, perfect. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for joining us, everybody. For more information about our programme of discussions, please go to the RA Group's website at www.ragroup.co.uk/news. And for more details about Glyndebourne's Open House series, please go to the website at www.glyndebourne.com. Meanwhile, we hope you have a lovely bank holiday weekend and get packing those picnics. See you later. Bye-bye.